It's great to see everybody this morning. Why don't you take your Bibles and turn to Exodus chapter 24. And as you're turning there, tell your neighbor, don't worship the cow. Exodus 24. Why don't you tell your other neighbor, don't worship the cow. Go ahead, don't be shy. Well, you want him to worship the cow? Did you say it to your neighbor? Last week we looked at the great story of God audibly speaking to the children of Israel from the mountain, Mount Horeb, in the mountains of Sinai. And he spoke audibly the first 10 commandments, and the people freaked out. They said, stop speaking to us or we will die. So God agreed, and he said, this is great. He said, I did this. I gave them a little glimpse of my awesome power and glory so that they would fear me. And if they feared me, they would not sin. And we talked about as our increase in the fear, as our fear of the Lord increases, our tolerance for sin will decrease. Our desire for holiness will increase as the fear of the Lord in our lives increase. And we're crying out for it. I know I have been. I hope you've been praying that prayer this week with me to seek for it earnestly and search for it like silver and obtain the fear of the Lord. And where we pick up after that record in Exodus is God then says, okay, I'm not going to speak audibly to the people, I'm going to speak to Moses. And in chapter 24, we read something that is remarkable. Remarkable. And I don't know if this isn't a very familiar record in Christianity, but it should be. This is a remarkable thing that happens. Look what happens in chapter 24, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, that's Moses' brother and Moses' brother's two sons, and the 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall worship at a distance. They're still at Mount Horeb. The top of the mountain is on fire. It's a volcano, earthquake, thunderstorm, hurricane, trumpet show. And the people were told to stay at a distance, and now the Lord says, well, I want Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu to come approach me with the 70 elders of Israel. Moses alone, however, shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people come up. Look at verse 9. Then Moses went up with Aaron. Up where? Up the mountain. With Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. And under his feet there appeared to be pavement of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself. Sapphire is a beautiful, clear gem. I bought my wife a beautiful sapphire ring once, and she said, babe, we can't do this. It looks too much like a diamond, and it's so big that people are going to think it's fake. So we returned the ring. I'll never forget sapphire. I don't know any of these gems or stones, but sapphire is clear. It looks almost like a diamond. So much so that you might think it's a diamond and think that it's a fake diamond. Noted, gentlemen. All right. And there's pavement underneath the feet of this vision that they see of the Lord. And it's sapphire as clear as the sky itself. And yet he did not stretch out his hand against the nobles of the son of Israel. And they saw God, they ate and drank. You see that? It says they saw the God of Israel, and he decided not to kill them, but let them see him. And it was like they saw his feet, and his feet were like staying on a pavement of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. Come on now. That's incredible. They're on top of this volcano, hurricane, thunder and lightning mountain, and they see God. Not just Moses, but Aaron, his brother, who's going to be the high priest, and Aaron's two sons, and 70 elders in Israel. I mean, God is giving them glimpse after glimpse, taste after taste of his goodness, because he desires them to be in relationship with him. And he doesn't kill them. That was very kind of him. Verse 12, now the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and remain there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the law and the commandment which I have written for their instruction. So Moses arose with Joshua his servant, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. But the elders, he said, wait for us here until we return to you. Oh, you know what? I totally skipped the coolest thing. Verse 11. He did not stretch out his hand against the nobles of the sons of Israel. They saw God, and what did they do? They had a dinner party on top of this mountain. I'm sorry. I'm like, wait, where's the coolest part? I missed it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. They had a dinner up with the Lord with the sapphire pavement. Can you imagine that? So he asked Moses to come up. He tells the rest of the elders to wait. And he says, verse 14, but to the elders he said, wait for us until we return to you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you, and whoever has a legal matter, let them approach him. So Moses going to the mountain. He puts Aaron in charge of the people. He says, if anybody has any problems, talk to Aaron or Hur, and they'll sort it out. Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai. And the cloud covered for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he called Moses from the midst of the cloud. And to the eyes of the sons of Israel, the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. Moses entered the midst of the cloud as he went up to the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. The first 6 of those days, there's this cloud that comes on, and Moses is probably just like this. And then God on the 7th day says, all right, you're ready to come up. And Moses goes to the top of the mountain, and to the people who are at the base of the mountain, the glory of the Lord was like a fire, consuming fire on top of the mountain, and they're at the base of it. Isn't that incredible? And what's going to begin now is Moses is going to be on the mountain for 40 days, and God is going to give Moses some specific instruction about how God and these people are going to be able to have a relationship with him in the days and the years ahead. He's going to give him specific instruction about this. Look at chapter 25, verse 8. This is the Lord speaking to Moses on the mountain. He says, let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I might dwell among them. According to all that I'm going to show you, just as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all of its furniture, just so you shall construct it. Verse 22. And in this sanctuary they built something called the tabernacle. There I will meet with you. From above the mercy seat, and between the 2 cherubim which are upon the ark of the testimony, you shall speak, I will speak to you all that I give you commandment for the sons of Israel. Verse 40. See that you make them after the pattern for them, which was shown to you on the mountain. So what God is asking Moses to do is he's giving him the detail to build something called the tabernacle. And tabernacle means a house or a dwelling place, right? It's going to be a sanctuary where God is going to dwell with his people. Okay? You should have a sheet nearby on your chair there with a picture. Look at the picture on the side that has the full picture of the tabernacle here. This is what, an artist's rendition, but of what the tabernacle was going to look like. It was 150 feet long. It was 75 feet wide for the outer court, made of curtains and tents, right? Look at this side here, the landscape side. And in it, there were going to be specific items. There was going to be what is actually called the tabernacle, which was also called the tent of meeting, which was 45 feet long and 15 feet wide. And that was going to be called the most holy place. And inside this holy place, God had certain items that he wanted constructed. And then on the outside of this holy place, this tabernacle, there was going to be an altar, and there was going to be a place for washing. Right? And this is where the priests were going to work. Look at this picture up on the wall here. This is someone that constructed a life-size depiction of it. Isn't that cool? So you see they did it to scale exactly as the Bible directs. So you see how big the people are compared to it, right? See the outer court, the altar, and the place of washing, and then the tabernacle in the back where the tents are. Isn't that pretty cool? And this is my favorite picture of the tabernacle. This is free, no charge. This is so cool. So all of the people of Israel are going to be camped around. This was going to be in the center of the camp, and God's glory was going to come and dwell there, and it was going to be the centerpiece of this nation as they journeyed to the promised land. God's presence in the middle, and you can see all the activity, and as night's starting to fall, the light from the glory of God sitting upon that tabernacle would have lit the whole place up. Isn't that amazing? It is pretty cool. So there's so many details about the tabernacle. I encourage you to read these chapters that we're going to be skipping over as we proceed in the story here. But if you look at your sheet again, what would happen here is that it would be quite the experience for a man or a woman to enter into this place. They would walk into this outer court of the tabernacle, the courtyard, and they would approach this altar. You see that first square thing there, right, with the smoke coming out? And as they approached it, they would smell the animals that were being sacrificed, right? Things like bulls and birds and things like that, and it would smell, right? If you put a cow on a burning altar, it smells like a barbecue, right? In the summer, don't you smell like the meat burning? It's like, oh man, it's almost dinner time, right? And it would have a certain aroma. And then as you'd walk into the courtyard, you'd start to feel the heat that would come off of the altar. And then you'd proceed a little more, and there'd be that place which was called the bronze laver, where there'd be washings done. You'd hear the splashing of the water as the people would wash themselves and be ceremonial clean. And then you would reach this part that's called the tabernacle, and it had 4 animal skins and curtains over it, covering it so that no light could come in. And there was a big curtain that was on the outside of the tent. You can see that there. The artist here opened it up so you can see what is inside. And imagine being one of the priests that was able to go into that sanctuary there, right? It'd be completely dark, right? You ever be in like we do this with the kids, you make a tent, you put the blankets over, it's completely dark, except that no light could come in because of the thickness of the skins of the animals over this, except there was a candelabra in there that would light the room up with a golden glow. And there was a table called the table of showbread, where there would be fresh bread that was placed on this table. So you're walking in, the place is glowing with this beautiful light from the candelabra, and it smells like fresh bread. I mean, if that's not like one of the best smells in the world, right? You're smelling the fresh bread, and at the far part of this large room, there was an altar of incense. So now there's incense burning, there's bread that's just so deliciously, right, smelling all these things. The light of the candle is flickering, and you're just in awe. And then behind this curtain, which had golden cherubims on the front of it, was where the Ark of the Covenant would be. And the high priest could go in there once a year to make atonement for the people. And that's where God's presence would come down, in this little 15 by 15 room called the Most Holy Place. And in these chapters, in chapter 25, in chapter 26, 27, and 28, God is giving Moses the description about how all these things could be built. Now, if you've ever read these chapters before, it makes your mind boggle, perhaps, right? I want you to make a curtain that's 15 feet high, that's made out of this certain fabric, and to tie it to a pole made of acacia wood with loops and silver tassels, and make the pomegranates on it, and cover it with porpoise skin. And you're just like, what? Cubits? What's a cubit, right? And our minds get lost in this whole story, right? And you read it again, and you're trying to figure out what he's talking about here. What he's talking about here is he's talking about the implements and the items that would be used so that the people would be able to worship him and his presence be with them, right? In chapter 28, you have the priestly garments are described. The priest would wear very specific things, and you look at the last verse of chapter 28, verse 43, talking about all the garments that would be made for the priests. Very specific instruction. The garments shall be on Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting, or when they approach the altar to minister in the holy place. Why? Well, so that they don't incur guilt and die. Okay. They were going to wear specific garments so that they did not incur guilt and then die. God had a certain way that he wanted them to approach them, because remember what happens when God speaks to you audibly? You die. Remember what happens when God's presence shows up in the camp? People faint. So God is trying to give the people something that they will be able to have relationship and work with him with, so that they can be close to him. And these garments are some of those things, right? The purpose of these items and their specific descriptions in chapter 25, 26, 27, 28, and following, it was God's specific instruction for how he was going to be able to have a worship or have a relationship with the people without them being consumed. Okay? Moses is on the mountain getting this information, and when he comes down, the people are going to be able to have a relationship with him. Not just the priest, but the people. In Deuteronomy chapter 4 on the wall here, it says that, what great nation has a God as near to them as the Lord our God is near to us whenever we call on him? Search all of history from the time God created people on the earth until now, and search from one end of the heaven to the other. Has anything as great as this ever been seen or heard before? Has any nation ever heard the voice of God speaking from the fire as you did and survived? Has any other God dared to take a nation for himself out of another nation by means of trials, miraculous signs, wonders, war, a strong hand, and a powerful arm, and terrifying acts? Yet that is what the Lord your God did for you in Egypt, right before your eyes. He showed you these things so that you would know that the Lord is God and that there is no other. Look at chapter 29. Chapter 29 talks about how the priests would be made holy and consecrated so they could enter the Lord's presence. And here's the whole point of all of this. Verse 43. The point of the tabernacle, the point of the altar being made, the point of the priests with their certain garments was verse 43. I will meet there with the sons of Israel, and it shall be consecrated by my glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar, and I will also consecrate Aaron and his sons to minister as priests to me. Because I will dwell among the sons of Israel, and I will be their what? Be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. I am the Lord their God. Now, some of you this might be brand new to some of you. This might be familiar to some of us. We've understood the tabernacle. We've seen this picture. We walked in this morning. We saw it on the chair. We said, oh, man, great. The tabernacle. Haven't heard John 3:16 in a while. What the heck? Go ahead. There's some of y'all in here that said, oh, great, the tabernacle, right? And he turned it over and he said, oh, great, the priest's outfit. You see the detail that God uses in these chapters that you hate is not because God has OCD. It's not because he likes his curtains hung in a specific way, because otherwise he just can't be God. No, I can't do a miracle because it's not the blue I like. It's not why he gives these details. It's because he's entering into a relationship with his people. And unless these things are made, these parameters are made, we will die in his presence. He is holy. We are not. The people of Israel are not. And he's giving them the parameters in which they would be able to worship him. So is it annoying and is it laborious detail because he has OCD? No, Moses is on top of the mountain getting the information. I don't care what I need to do, because in the end, when he comes down, the people have a relationship with him. Can you imagine going to visit a sick friend, maybe a friend that has a respiratory illness, right? And they're in their home, they're not allowed to leave, they're on bed rest, right? And their lungs are having a hard time taking in oxygen. And before you go to visit this dear friend of yours, the doctor tells you, you got to shower. You got to shower twice. And you can't wear any perfume for the whole week because it seeps into your skin. And even after the shower, they might smell it. And if they smell it, their lungs are going to get filled up with something that's going to make it very hard for them to breathe. You can't use hand lotion in their presence, right? You can't even chew gum because your breath may do something to affect their lungs, right? Would you hear that, going to visit your sick friend and be like, that stinks? 2 showers? Come on. You'd be like, okay, what a blessing to know how I can enter this place where this friend of mine is sick to go visit them. And you wouldn't be bothered that you need to take 2 showers. Why? Because the point isn't the preparation. The point is the visit. The point is being with this person that you love. You see, God isn't weak. He doesn't have OCD or any of these things, but he knows that these are the specific things that must be done in order to keep us alive, the children of Israel, to stay alive. It changes the whole perspective of it. Instead of, all right, whatever, yeah, just get to where, okay, where's Jesus? Where's Daniel in the lion's den? We like that one, right? Where's Noah's Ark? Oh, that happened already. Man, these verses are difficult. These are the preparations that man can make to enter into God's presence. Do I need to say it another way? We get the point here. These commands are to ensure an ongoing relationship with us by God, to purify us and draw us closer to him. And Moses, go to chapter 32. Moses, let's get back to thinking about Moses for a second. Where's Moses while these commands are being given? Where is he? He's on top of the mountain hearing these commands from God. I think it says in chapter 33 that Moses, when he came down from the mountain, he was glowing so much that people had to have him cover his face, because they couldn't see, because his face was glowing, because he was in God's presence. You think Moses is up there hearing the voice of God saying, really? Silver curtain rods? He's in awe. God is speaking to him. The mountain is still on fire. There's still a thick cloud. And Moses is up there hearing these things. You better believe he was writing every single thing painstakingly down to make sure it was just what God wanted, because he was in awe of God. Moses is on top of the mountain that's on fire. Let's not forget that. He's there on the top. And when he comes down, people can have a relationship with God. He could be their God and we could be his people. And just imagine the excitement that must have been waiting for him at the bottom of the mountain. Look at chapter 32. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down off the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. Because as for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Moses is on top of the mountain with God, and the people at the base of the mountain, while it's still on fire, say, well, we don't know what happened to Moses, but we are anxious to worship something. So Aaron, brother of Moses, come, make us a god who will go before us, because we don't know what happened to Moses. Well, let's see what happens in verse 2. Aaron said to them, "Tear off the gold rings which are in your ears from your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me, and tell all the people." Then all the people tore off the gold rings which were in their ears, and they brought them to Aaron. And I just know we can count on Aaron. Aaron is going to take these gold things, and he's purifying the people, I bet. I bet that's what he's doing. I bet he's trying to see who really is anxious to worship something other than the Lord. And he's going to take these gold things and he's going to throw them back. I bet that's what he's going to do. Because after all, Aaron was one of the people that 40 days before was on the mountain having dinner with God. I know we can count on Aaron. He's the one that Moses left in charge. The people might be anxious, but Aaron, I know he's going to do the right thing. Look at verse 4. And he took this from their hand, and oh my gosh, he fashioned with a graving tool, and he made it into a molten calf. And they said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." And now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. Tomorrow shall be a feast to Yahweh." And so the next day they rose early, and they offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink, and they rose up to play. No! Aaron, he took their gold and he melted it down and he fashioned into a cow. Moses is on the mountain with God. And as soon as he comes down, relationship for the people. God's presence with them, leading them into the promised land. And while he's on the top of the mountain, the people are down there and say, "We don't know what happened to Moses, and we don't have time to wait. Aaron, will you make for us a god?" And Aaron does it. And the worst part of what Aaron does is he doesn't make this golden calf, this cow, and say, "There you go, I made you a god." He says, "This is the God that took you from Egypt. Tomorrow, you see this golden cow right here? Tomorrow we're going to have a day of worship to Yahweh, because there he is, the one who took you from Egypt." Just 40 days before, Aaron was on the mountain with God. Just 40 days before, he was on the mountain with God with sapphire pavement and dining with him. while his brother is still on the top of the mountain. Look at verse 7. The Lord spoke to Moses, who's still on the mountain, let's not forget. Go down at once, for your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them, and they've made for themselves a molten calf and have worshipped it and have sacrificed to it and said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. They turned quickly. 40 days before, let's not forget again, that God spoke audibly the first of the 10 commandments, the first of which is, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods but me. And the second of which is, you should not make yourself a graven image, not after likeness of man or of beast, or things that are of the earth, or things that are of the sky. Number 2, the second thing he said, they've done it already, how quickly they turned. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, they are an obstinate people. Now let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and I will make of you a great nation. Look at verse 15. So Moses turned and went down to the mountain, with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand. Tablets which were written on both sides. They were written on one side and the other, and these tablets were God's work. And the writing was with God's writing engraved on the tablet. And Joshua, brother Joshua, who's waiting for the Moses up at the top, said, he heard the sound of people as they shouted, and he said to Moses, Moses, there's a sound of war in the camp. We better hurry down. They need you. They're their leader. It sounds like they're being attacked. Maybe Pharaoh didn't die in the Red Sea after all. Maybe they're trying to get us back to Egypt. And Moses said, no, it's not the cry, the sound of a cry of triumph, nor is it the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear. It came about as soon as Moses came near the camp that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger burned. He threw the tablets from his hand and shattered them at the foot of the mountain, and he took the calf which they had made, and he burned it with fire, and he ground it into powder and scattered it over the surface of the water, and he made the sons of Israel drink it. It says in Deuteronomy 9 that when Moses is retelling the story, that when God informs him of the sin, it says, I turned and I came down from the mountain while the mountain was burning with fire. And the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my hand, and I saw that you had indeed sinned against the Lord your God. You had made yourselves a molten calf, and had turned aside quickly from the way which the Lord had commanded you. The mountain was still on fire when they're worshiping this cow. I understand 40 days might be a long time for some of us to wait for something. In the scheme of our lives, it's not. But sitting there at the foot of the mountain for 40 days, I could understand if there was silence and we didn't know what happened to Moses, but that was not the case. The mountain was still on fire when Moses came down. How does that get old in 40 days? The glory of God resting upon anything. Unless a mountain that's burning and quaking. You see, they were unwilling to wait for what God had provided for them. And I thought about it. They lost the fear of the Lord, because if they had remembered the fear of the Lord, they would wait for them. And they wouldn't exchange him for a cow simply because they experienced delay. See, the thing is for us is we don't know. The people did not know. We do not know what God is preparing on top of the mountain. Yes, is it 40 days? Yes. But we don't know what's waiting on the top of the mountain to come down. But if we fear him and if we know who God really is and we trust him, then why would we go anywhere else? Why, when the mountain's ablaze and something is coming down from the mountain for us, would we say, let's go worship a cow? Man, don't trade the Lord for a cow. Don't worship a cow. Tell your neighbor again, don't worship a cow. Don't worship a cow. I don't think we'd ever worship a cow, but we do worship the cow. When we're tired of waiting. When we're tired of waiting for God's timing for something, we force our way and we're left with problems and lost opportunities. When we're tired of waiting for God's provision, we stop giving and tithing so that we can meet our needs. When we are tired of waiting for God's plan for a relationship, we compromise and we settle for our plan instead. When we're tired of waiting for God's way of handling something, we ignore people, we cut people off, we have anger, and etc. When we're tired of waiting for God's wisdom about a situation, we do what we want, and people get hurt, and we dig ourselves in a hole because we're tired of waiting. And then we tend to feel good about what we're doing, thinking that it's the way of the Lord. Just like the people. They didn't worship the cow as the cow god. They worshiped the cow as Yahweh. Behold, this is the God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. Tomorrow we're going to have a feast day to the Lord, to Yahweh. And they worshiped him. They sacrificed, they worshiped, and they sang. Why do that? Why would they exchange the awesome power and glory of God for a cow? Because they didn't want to wait anymore. They didn't want to wait for what was at the top of the mountain, knowing that what was at the top of the mountain was great and was for their good, and it was God's way of having a relationship with him. If they had just waited for what God wanted to come down from the mountain. And so my heart cry this morning is, don't exchange what's best for what's now. Don't exchange what is best, that which is at the top of the mountain, which is coming down. It's coming down any minute. Or maybe he's going to ask you to come up. Don't trade that for what's now. Well, we don't know what happened to God because he's taken a little too long. Moses confronts his brother in chapter 32, verse 21. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you, that you have brought such great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Do not let the anger of my Lord burn. For you know the people yourself, and they are prone to evil. For they said to me, 'Make a God for us who will go before us,' because this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And I said, 'Whoever has any gold, let them tear it off.' And they gave it to me. I threw it in the fire, and out came a cow." Tell you what, it doesn't tell us, verse 25, Moses saw the people were out of control. He doesn't even I would imagine he's looking at his brother and he just doesn't have anything to say. There's no verse about what he says because he's probably just I think that's what the Hebrew says. It's a picture of Moses just really? They gave you the gold, you threw it in the fire, and a cow came out? And that's ridiculous. Think about it. Isn't that ridiculous? The reality of what it is ridiculous. But it is what we do because we're unwilling to wait for what God has on top of the mountain. For what God has is best because we want what is now. So we say, well, I'm just going to make a cow and worship it. Or when someone says, well, why didn't you wait for the Lord? We say, well, I just got some gold, threw it in the fire, and out came this cow. I didn't have any other choice. The cow started chasing me, said, worship me. And then Moses confronts the people in verse 25, and Moses saw the people were out of control, and Aaron had let them get out of control to be a derision amongst their enemies. And Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And the sons of Levi gathered together to him. And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, every man of you put his sword upon his thigh and go back and forth from gate to gate in the camp, and kill every man his brother, every man his friend, every man his neighbor." And so the sons of Levi did as Moses instructed, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. He said, "Who's with the Lord?" Many people came, but the priests of the Levites came in particular. And he said, "All right, everyone that's not over here, you need to go amongst the camp and kill them. And I don't care if they're your brother or your father or your neighbor, because the camp needs to be cleansed from this idolatry." And 3,000 people died. 3,000 people, 3,000 real people died because they worshiped a cow instead of waited for what God had been bringing down from the mountain. Moses said, "Dedicate yourselves today to the Lord, for every man has sinned against his son and against his brother, in order that he may bestow a blessing upon you today." And on the next day, Moses said to the people, You yourselves have committed a great sin, and now I'm going to the Lord. Perhaps he will make atonement for your sin. Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Alas, this people has committed a great sin, and they have made a god of gold for themselves. But now, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, please blot me out from your book which you have read." Man, Moses is such a great man. And the Lord said to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book." There was no mercy on those that had sinned. This was a time of judgment. They turned from God so quickly. 40 days after he spoke audibly to them, while the mountain is still quaking and on fire, and Moses is up there about to bring the very thing that will allow man to have a relationship with God, for allowing God's presence to be with his people, and instead they worshiped a cow. But go now, lead the people where I told you. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I punish, I will punish them for their sin. And the Lord smote the people because what they had done with the calf which Aaron had made. Man. Again, my heart in this is I continue to want my fear of the Lord to increase so that I would never consider going to worship a cow. So I would never consider he's taking too long. I don't want what anyone else has to offer. The mountain is blazing. His presence is on the top of the mountain. Why would I go anywhere else? And what I think I need to do in the analogy of this story is I need to wait at the foot of God's mountain until what is on top of the mountain comes down or the Lord asks me to come up. But it is never an option for the people of God to forsake him to go worship anything else. It's never an option for the people of God to forsake the foot of the mountain to get things done according to our time. It can't ever be an option for the people of God to leave God's glory and his power and his might to go and find our sufficiency in anything else. Because in those times we're just worshiping a cow, and that's dumb. That's what it is. So some of us this morning need to hear, wait for the Lord. Wait on the Lord. What is coming from him, though not according to your timetable, is best. And it's good. And it's going to allow you to have a relationship with him. So wait on the Lord. Don't get discouraged. Wait on the Lord. Some of us need to hear, well, we're like Aaron. We know better. We know that we shouldn't go and worship something else, but we're being pressured by people around us to maybe compromise. And this morning I want to say, no, don't be like Aaron. Don't give in to the pressure of the people. He didn't have a good alibi at the end, because at the end he forsook the Lord too. So wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. And some of us need to put our eyes back on the mountain. We need to put our eyes back on God and stop looking at the desert around us, right? If the mountain's in front of you and it's where God is, and you turn around, it's just wilderness behind you. And you get discouraged and you get frustrated and you get wondering, why isn't God showing up? Why isn't he doing what I thought he said he was going to do and promise? Well, it's because our eyes are not upon him and his glory, but it's looking at the wilderness and the desert all around us. And to those of us that are in that situation, you say, turn your eyes back on the Lord. Put your eyes back on him and his mountain, his glory, and fear him again, so that you'd never think about wandering and going away and worshiping a cow. Don't worship the cow. Worship the Lord. Worship the Lord. So let's pray. Father, we need your help in this, Lord. If these people that saw your glory 40 days later turn from you, Lord, woe is me. If Aaron dined with you and saw the sapphire pavement underneath your feet, led the worship of a cow, oh, Father, woe is me. I need you, Lord, and I need your help. I pray that, Lord, you would increase my vision of you in my heart and in my mind. Help us to wait. Help us to wait, Father. Though we might be waiting at the foot of the mountain, we're not on the top of the mountain where everything's right, but we're at the foot of the mountain and you're with us still, Lord, and we just need to wait on you. Father, those of us this morning that are tired of waiting, that are growing weary of waiting, I pray that you'd strengthen them and encourage them with this message, Lord, that the other option other than waiting for you is worshiping a cow, and that's not what your people do. Pray, Father, that you would hear our hearts that are so quickly flustered and fluttered and can't wait, Father. I don't want to trade what you have planned for us for anything else. You alone are the affection of my soul and of my heart. I don't want to worship anything but you. I don't want to turn to anything but you. I don't want to dress anything else up thinking, oh, that's you. But I want to worship you. I want to be with you. I want to know you. I want to see you. I want to glorify you. I want to be in relationship with you, your way, God. That means I got to build a stupid tent. That means I got to get on my knees. Whatever it means, Lord, may your people long for that relationship with you and get a little taste of it so that we don't turn and worship a cow. So church, as we close, let's stand. Let's sing this song as a